Whew. How's it going, everyone? You know, when it comes to fictional characters that have been known to put hands on others, there's a few people that come to mind that really embody the phrase, "I want all the smoke." There's characters like Asura from Asura's Wrath, Kenpachi from Bleach, Kratos from God of War, and one of my personal favorite characters, Mori Jin from the God of High School. And the reason why he's one of my personal favorite characters is because he's quite literally Son Wukong. Also, please read the God of High School because it is truly peak. Sun Wukong is a part of Chinese mythology from an old story called Journey to the West, and is known for being one of the strongest characters in fiction. With how popular his characters become, he's been an inspiration for a lot of different characters over the years, and even received many different adaptations as well. But there is one thing I've been anticipating for quite some time, a game for the Monkey King called Black Myth Wukong. When this game was first revealed back in 2020, it instantly piqued my interest from the graphics, the gameplay, the combat system, and even the soundtrack. And I was shocked to find out that this would be the first time the developers took a crack at making a AAA game. Game Science is a Chinese game development that has worked on a project in the past called Art of War: Red Tides for mobile. Oh, so was there reason to be nervous about the release of this game? Sure. On one hand, the game looks promising and has a lot of potential. On the other, there's not much to use as reference that gives a guarantee for a good game. Would this game meet my expectations? Were the critics right about giving this game such a high appraisal? How good was Black Myth Wukong? To first start things off, let's look at the gameplay for Wukong and how the developers were able to grab my attention for 40 plus hours. In the beginning, I thought I was going to be dealing with another Souls-like game when faced against different varieties of enemies and challenges, but that wasn't entirely the case here. After recovering from the high of playing the new DLC for Elden Ring, I was surprised to find that, yes, even though there was a certain level of difficulty that this game had to offer, it was a lot more straightforward on how you had to deal with enemies. You die? You can just simply spawn back to the last checkpoint you visited with no repercussions to your stats or money. When visiting these checkpoints, you can actually do quite a bit to help improve the way your character plays. As you level up, you can use attribute points to improve your stats, unlock cool skills, and even learn new stances. You can even upgrade your healing items, staff, and clothing depending on the materials you manage to collect throughout your journey of the game, whether it's through defeating enemies or opening chests. I appreciated the fact that there was a considerable amount of things that you could use for customization, because without it, I'd be getting my ass whooped by the enemies. But with how smooth the combat system felt, that was something I rarely had to worry about. When you're in the middle of a fight, the game offers you a lot of different ways to beat enemies. Whether it's when you come across a small opponent or even a boss, as soon as you begin swinging your staff or even perfect dodge, you slowly build up a focus bar, which eventually turns into focus points that can be spent to deal a devastating final blow. The more focus you have, the stronger the damage dealt. With the 3 different stances you're given, it's up to you to decide how you want to make your approach. The Smash stance is the first stance to receive in the game, where it grants you the most mobility, and for me was usually the best option for fighting bosses and smaller enemies. The Pillar stance is used primarily for defensive ability, where you stand on your staff and slowly build a focus to slam enemies from afar. Be mindful when using this technique though, because it heavily relies on stamina, so there will be times where you might end up wasting it and get punished. As for the Thrust stance, it offers the most rewarding combos, but is a little bit harder to land heavy attacks due to the fact that you have to stand still when charging up your focus. For me, I primarily use the Smash stance simply because of how satisfying it was to bonk enemies on top of the head. But that didn't even scratch the surface of what this game had to offer. There are also spells that require mana that can be used to give you the edge in battle with cooldowns. Spells like Immobilize that let you freeze enemies for a short period of time, Cloud Step which lets you escape from fighting while leaving a decoy in your place, Rock Solid which acts as a parry attack with perfect timing, and many more spells that can be unlocked as you go further into the story. I especially like using the spell A Pluck of Many because it granted the player the ability to clone yourself and quite literally jump whoever's in front of you. And let's be honest, why respect a one-on-one when you can end the fight by jumping your opponent? Depending on the spell you use, it will determine the amount of mana that is consumed. It's important to keep in mind that you need to keep track of how much you use up during fights, because there may be times when you think you have enough for a skill but don't have quite enough. But just when I thought that was all for the combat, there's also transformations, which in my opinion was the most fun part of playing this game. There were 2 different types of transformations. Spirit transformations was when you would fight a stronger version of an enemy and absorb their spirit to temporarily become them, and use their special attack while also gaining a passive effect. Then there was the transformation spell, which could be used once you defeat a specific boss and allowed you to not only become the boss you defeated, but also gain their moveset for a short period of time. It was so satisfying being able to become the very thing that would beat my ass simply because it allowed me to inflict the same pain and annoyance onto others. I might need to take therapy after this game. Same with the spirit transformations. The amount of times I used the Wandering White Spirit should be concerning because I really was trying to give everyone CTE, myself included. Not only that, there were also vessels that granted unique effects which just added more versatility to this game. And all these spells, transformations, and vessels could be discovered through the exploration of different maps. I'm kinda glad that this game wasn't an open world exploration and instead had a more linear map design, which allowed for the players to go for the straightforward route to progress through the story, but also explore additional areas to discover hidden gems. You travel through 6 maps, with each area being different from the last, and with every part that can be discovered, Game Science did a great job creating the scenery. There wasn't an area where I found myself bored because the size of the maps allowed just enough room for both exploration and discovery, so I was pretty appreciative of that aspect of the game. However, I wasn't a fan of how there was no map to help indicate where you were at times, because even though the maps were well designed, I would run into a lot of invisible walls whenever I tried to go to other areas thinking it was accessible. Even if you don't add a map UI to the gameplay, adding a shortcut that allows you to quickly peek at where you're currently at would help a whole lot and prevent most of the confusion when looking around. When exploring, you can uncover a whole lot of things, whether it's the different checkpoints for you to upgrade your character, meditation spots to earn more attribute points, celestial pills to increase different stats, and many more. With the new gen consoles, this game looks amazing on my PS5, and I could only imagine how great it looks on PC. The only way you were able to progress over to the next area was by finishing up the chapter beforehand. So let's go over the story. When it comes to the story of this game, I thought we were going to be playing as Son Wukong and potentially go through the old tale of Journey to the West. But instead, this game takes place after that story, and we play as a monkey who is referred to as the Destined One. Now, I'm not an expert on the entirety of the old story, maybe fragments, but in the prologue, we do play as Wukong for a short period, who is seen preparing to fight the Heavenly Army. Due to his rematch against Erling Shen, Wukong is eventually defeated and sealed in stone while having separated his 6 senses into relics, and it's up to us to recover them all to bring him back. But that's no easy feat for the Destined One, because each relic has been recovered by a final boss of each area. For the most part, the story is very straightforward, and to me personally, was a little hard to feel impactful because of the amount of characters and references that came and went during my journey. It did motivate me to do a bit of research after I beat the game, because you are basically just following the footsteps of Wukong and his journey, and who he interacted with, and who he pissed off. What really surprised me about this story is that even though you are playing the aftermath of Journey to the West, there's still a bunch of lore that is dropped once you complete each chapter of the game. You're granted different animation styles that provide themes around the final bosses you faced, and with how the entire game is based around Chinese culture and mythos, I love learning more about its history, music, poems, and so much more just by simply watching it. Could the game be summarized by saying all you're doing is collecting relics to revive Wukong? Sure. But what's underneath is themes surrounding so much more. And with the side quests, it helped uncover even more of the story's lore. The side quests in this game were interesting because it ties back to the whole exploration aspect. If you're not exploring, chances are you might end up passing up on a quest line that can benefit you in the future. Now, if I were to compare the way this game handles the quest line to another, I'd probably compare it to Elden Ring with how you're not given any specific way of tracking missions, and on occasion we'll see characters in different areas ready to progress. It's important that you explore, because who knows who you might run into. Maybe a horse, or maybe a drunk pig. Maybe even someone that can upgrade your armor or gourd. Don't miss out on the side quests. I personally don't think the side quests were truly memorable, but the end goal for me, and I would assume for others, was just so I could get the additional items for my character. And they were pretty helpful, especially whenever I had to deal with the boss fights. Now, there are a lot of unique bosses in this game, and when I say there's a lot, I mean you could defeat one, progress a little further into the game, and find another one close to the area you just fought in. In the beginning, I was a little worried that the difficulty was a little too easy for me, simply because I was beating every boss under 4 attempts. But that quickly changed as soon as I continued further into the story and these bosses decided to be more aggressive and deal more damage. But for someone like me, I just don't know when to quit. So if a boss was going to give me trouble, best believe I was going to see it through to their very last breath. And I love the fact that after beating each boss, it just motivated me to continue further into the game to fight the next opponent. Now, even though the combat felt nice while playing, there was still the issue of locking onto the boss and having to deal with occasional poor camera angles, because they decided to do some insane move that forced me into a corner while dodging. It was moments like those that would cause me to lose track of where everything was and be the reason why I died most of the time. And I swear, it wasn't because I was rushing in constantly. With how many bosses there were, it was hard for me to pick which one was my all-time favorite battle. But there are a couple I have a few words for. Spoilers for those who haven't made it far into the game. You can skip to this timestamp on the screen. You still there? Alright. Yo Long, use a bitch. I hope you end up stubbing your toe every time you come across a table, a chair, hell even a corner. Killing you felt so refreshing, and I'm glad that I could use you as a transformation afterwards. Rest in piss. Erling Shen, yes, you may have bested me in the beginning of the game, and I'm sure that boosted your ego, but it was me who ran the ones once more and proved why they called me the Destined One. You. And the final boss, Stone Monkey, I have never in my life been so disrespected until I faced you. Throwing me across the map and forcing me to pick up my staff while laughing in my face is one thing, but when you steal my gourd and end up healing yourself in the process, I mean, who the hell do you think you are? I can see why the gods hated fighting your ass, because you were so annoying. To the point where I felt like Frieza saying, "Must I be subjected to the sight of that simian, that apish countenance, that damned monkey man?" But you know what? I grew while fighting these opponents. And after beating each one, I felt victorious. And every time I got the final hit, it just made me feel one step closer to achieving my goal. So, I still got the one up on them. For the most part. I really did like playing Black Myth Wukong. It was truly an amazing experience diving deep into Chinese mythology and learning more about the world Sun Wukong came from. Sure, there was occasional issues with the camera angles and invisible walls in the maps weren't all too great, but with the combat, the beautiful sceneries, the music, the boss fights, the themes, it all blended well into one great game. Obviously, it wasn't entirely perfect for a first timer, but it almost feels like Game Science has been in the business for a long time, and they certainly will be with how successful this game was. If you haven't already purchased Black Myth Wukong, do yourself a favor and get yourself a copy right away, because it certainly is a game to be remembered for a long time. And if you've already played, what are your thoughts on the game? Who was the hardest boss you faced? Leave a comment down below. And if you made it this far, please make sure you like the video and of course subscribe to the channel. Your support truly means a lot to me. With that being said, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Take care, everybody.